In a domain of modern fiction, Seo MoonYeob, once hailed as the world's most robust superhuman, selflessly gave his life to preserve humankind. Assumed dead, he resurfaces 17 years later in a world now harmonious. Nevertheless, his return sparks a revolution in the world of superhuman sports, reshaping its landscape in surprising ways. Get ready for an electrifying saga of action, sports, and fantasy unlike any other. The story begins with warriors raiding a mysterious haven of monsters. Before long, the harbor starts crumbling. One guy directs his team members that demons will be pissed at them, so they must readily escape the dungeon because lingering for even a moment would result in their facing inevitable death. All the monsters are pissed and want to exterminate all the lowly overworlds responsible for destroying their sanctuary. The warriors are getting more frantic that the outbursting number of demons would definitely catch them. Numerous explosions start on their way, but then one guy stands up as their messiah and tries to slow down the oncoming demonic entourage. He expresses only one wish to his teammates: if they make it out alive, they better write him a biography. Seo MoonYeob is a guy who selflessly gives his life to preserve humankind. Since the very beginning of time, humanity remained unaware that they were not the sole civilization inhabiting Earth. An utterly distinct society of formidable creatures also lives beneath the ground, known as the Underworlders. One day, the Underworlders break the barriers and attack humanity, and human existence gets on the verge of extermination. The pathetic human retaliation didn't hinge on Underworlders' dominion. Even military strikes proved effective because the monsters possessed supernatural powers. However, the suffering didn't persist among humans for long. The same mystical forces somehow influenced them, leading to the awakening of their dormant supernatural abilities. And the few fated superhumans now turned from Batman to Superman and got some superpowers. Now the time came for the humans to fight against the ugly subterranean creeps. Humanity began dismantling their dungeons, one after another, and humans once again saw a glimmer of hope on this fateful day. The Korean Justice League, composed of the 7 strongest superhumans, gathered together in the spring of 2005 to raid the final dungeon called Gate. The team of 7 superhumans raided this dungeon, the central base of the Underworlders, and finally, they won the never-ending war. They became more heroes and achieved enormous wealth and fame. But Seo MoonYeob, their leader, who prefers death over the disgrace of running, didn't make it back. The warriors who survived are heightened to the status of stars. Even the late Seo MoonYeob accomplished a legendary tribute, resulting in the erection of a grand statue in honor of the fallen war hero. And just like that, 17 years just slipped away, and today marks the Battlefield National Representative Game Match A. Today, South Korea and France will compete against each other at the National Battlefield Arena Stadium in Seoul. At the beginning of the game, it gets very fierce on the Korean pool of warriors as they cannot react up to the mark. Only one French player, Nathan Bernard, is ruthlessly slaying Korean fighters. He slams 6 Korean players alone. The anchors are also surprised that the foundation of Battlefield League has never made such a deadly player who is already among the top 3 ranked superhumans in the current age of the battlefield. The sole female player, Baek Hae-yeon, stands as the final beacon of hope for Korea in the battle against Nathan Bernard. She is also the daughter of one of Korea's 7 war heroes, Baek Ji-ho. Baek Hae-yeon darts towards Nathan, wielding her weapon, a strap with power. Attempting a slashing whip attack, she finds Nathan swiftly dodging her attack, confident that his current team renders him invincible against any opponent. After skillfully disassembling her weapon, he defeated her and successfully eliminated the final Korean player, bringing the combat to a close. South Korea is completely crushed in a brutal display of superiority, failing to secure a single point against France's commanding 11-point lead as remarkable. Nathan single-handedly eliminated 7 players from the Korean national team. Across the nation, despair settles in as the once abundant land with superhumans who courageously saved humanity now wrestles with the stark reality of their defeat. The challenge lies in that the heroes who once showcased incredibly might now find it difficult to mentor a new generation capable of reaching their achievements, apparently due to the coaching leadership of Baek Ji-ho, a former war superhero. The country that had produced the saviors of humanity, Seo MoonYeob and Baek Ji-ho, is sadly in a pitfall in the realm of strength. Their team's poor performance agitated the entire social media audience. They only support Baek Hae-yeon, as she always shows true warrior blood. Watching all this, Baek Ji-ho, whose coaching had already resulted in 3 consecutive defeats to the team, pondered that the Korean superhumans lacked the abilities and had disappointed everyone. The compatible ones have retired from divinity or sacrificed themselves long ago. Baek Ji-ho enters the coach waiting room and takes a deep sigh. While looking at the picture of Seo MoonYeob, He says it would be nice if my friend is still alive. Right after, a young boy knocks at the door, informing him of the press because everyone is waiting in curiosity. Ji-ho hopelessly replies that today he should apologize to the nation because the current team lacks the essentials, and with this wit, he can't continue as a coach anymore. The boy insists but has decided not to alter his stance unless Seo MoonYeob returns to life or a miracle occurs, as his reputation is now at risk. Soon after, he receives a call from the association president, and upon answering, he asks Ji-ho, "Did you hear the news?" Baek Ji-ho was already expecting something like it. So, he dryly replies that it must be about how our national team has dismayed our nation by brutally losing the game. But the president finds out about some other news that entirely changes the expressions of the war hero, and his eyeball constricts upon hearing it. It's the square where the three statues of legend are placed. The first is Admiral Yi Sun-shin, the second is Emperor Sejong the Great, and finally, the man, the myth, and the story, the savior of the 6 heroes for the price of his life, Seo MoonYeob. A while ago, after the International Gotopia League match ended, someone fell from the sky on the statue of the hero Seo MoonYeob. He had armor and an appearance similar to the figure he had destroyed upon impacting land. The news that changed the expressions of Baek Ji-ho is that Seo MoonYeob came back to life. Upon choosing to sacrifice himself for his friend's survival, Seo MoonYeob finds the gates of the world closing, which gives rise to a gathering of banding monsters. In the face of these lasting waves of underworld monsters, Seo MoonYeob stands resolute, his gaze reflecting relentless determination as he prepares to fight to the very end. The scene shifts to the present, where Seo MoonYeob's eyes gradually open, revealing a hospital room around him. As the nurse explains his situation, he gets shocked, realizing that he is awakened in 2022. His memories were stopped at the 2005 dungeon raid, leaving him astounded as time passed out his realization. Attempting to provide relief, the nurse realizes the inevitable confusion and urges him to make sense of the present by turning on the TV for the latest news updates. The breaking news announces that Seo MoonYeob, once considered deceased, emerges as new as the leader of the 7 heroes after his 17-year absence. Presently undergoing treatment at the hospital, he returns to Earth unharmed, without catching any severe injuries. Experts assume this phenomenon might arise from distortions within the fabric of space-time. Seo MoonYeob reflects on the passage of 17 years and realizes that despite the considerable amount of time, it feels like only a few days since the dungeon raid. Outside the hospital window, a crowd of reporters and journalists gathers, trying to catch a glimpse of Seo MoonYeob. Amidst this sensation, he ponders that despite the passage of 17 years, some people never change. Staring in his reflection, a strange realization dawns upon him. Despite his 47 years of living, he appears unchanged. This makes him ponder about surviving for 17 years in those dreadful time and space mix-ups, which he finds hard to accept. Then, he remembers the most important thing in his life: money. The nurse demonstrates that, as he intended, his money went to help the needy kids, his house is now a museum, and his old car got sold as a fancy antique. Upon hearing this, Seo MoonYeob becomes sad and overwhelmed with hopelessness. It's hard for him to comprehend that only a few days have passed since his departure, yet everything around him has shifted dramatically. Noticing his worried expression, the nurse tries comforting him, saying nobody will leave him behind since he saved the Earth. She adds that Mr. Baek Ji-ho got in touch when he heard the news and will be visiting soon. Before she leaves, she reminds him to ring the bell if he needs anything. Seo MoonYeob remains fascinated by the situation and asks Baek Ji-ho for more details later. But first, he decides to check his body's state, using his incredible ability of scanning his eyes. This power lets him see and understand the skills and abilities of living beings, making him the strongest superhuman in the world. It doesn't just reveal current skills, but also dormant potential. Thanks to this exceptional ability, he became the leader of dungeon raids when he was still young. When Ji-ho asked to be his student, Seo MoonYeob initially distrusted Ji-ho's strength. However, he realized Ji-ho's incredible potential after using his remarkable eyes to examine Ji-ho. Using this unique ability, he assisted Ji-ho in becoming one of the 7 heroes. While pondering all this, Seo MoonYeob checked his abilities. Most stats were already at their highest, except for one, the focus stat, which had surpassed the maximum of 100 and reached 110. To his surprise, he also acquired a new skill, immortality. This skill made him resistant to death by any physical means. He realized he must have gained this surprising skill during a battle 17 years ago. Considering using this skill earlier, Baek Ji-ho suddenly arrives in his room. Ji-ho gazes at him, A mixture of uncertainty prevails and tears come into his eyes. As always, MoonYeob smiles at his old buddy and tells him he has grown much weaker. Ji-ho wipes his tears and smiles, then replies that it's because the world is now peaceful. Both friends head up to the hospital's rooftop. Playfully, MoonYeob teases Ji-ho, asking if he's still shedding tears. Ji-ho responds humbly, explaining that tears become more frequent as life continues. Seo MoonYeob, being young, quickly grasps Ji-ho's sentiment. Curious about a promise, Seo MoonYeob questions Ji-ho if he kept his word about the biography. Ji-ho confirms that he enrolled a famous ghostwriter known for composing fantasy novels. He has also made significant worldwide honors by creating documentaries and a well-known movie. Listening to Ji-ho's updates, Seo MoonYeob expresses his continued amazement at the world, which has developed over 17 years. Gazing at the surroundings, he remarks on the impressive infrastructure. In a lighter tone, he tells Ji-ho that despite saving the entire world, he still feels destitute and homeless. Ji-ho places his hand on MoonYeob's shoulder in a gesture of true friendship, offering support when required most. MoonYeob responds with a cordial smile and asks Ji-ho about his financial situation. Ji-ho reveals that he became wealthy after the dungeon raid. MoonYeob playfully makes fun of Ji-ho again, calling him an idiot for still holding onto his wealth. However, Ji-ho calmly explains that he has entrusted experts to manage it in a business. Despite this, MoonYeob continues to jest by teasing Ji-ho about being jobless. Ji-ho elaborates, sharing that he's been settled with other duties, including his role as the head coach of the national team. He takes out his cell phone, advising Seo MoonYeob to watch a video. The video showcases highlights from the Battlefield World Cup, but MoonYeob interprets it as humans battling in dungeons they had already cleared. Ji-ho tells him about a virtual reality game where players fight in an artificial arena. He tells MoonYeob to perceive it as a superhuman sport because of losing significance due to the world's newfound peace. From MoonYeob's perspective, it all seems like child's play. Yet, Ji-ho counters by mentioning highly skilled players who can rival even the 7 heroes. He highlights how the World Championship has evolved into a source of national pride. Seo MoonYeob comprehends Ji-ho's point and starts considering South Korea's situation. His query takes Ji-ho aback, and MoonYeob repeats the question with a rebuking tone, suggesting that the country probably has numerous strong players who can easily overpower these little games. Finally, Ji-ho discloses with a heavy heart that South Korea occupies the lowest position in the international rankings. Hearing this news, Seo MoonYeob is utterly shocked. The reality is far beyond what he could have imagined. When a great evil disappears, it is because of the next evil which destroys the first. Great words by our great master Baek Ji-ho. Seo MoonYeob inquires about his blabbering, to which he replies that South Korea got obliterated in Battlefield, as if some witch did black magic on them. Seo MoonYeob asks again, so Baek Ji-ho explains that since the conclusion of the war, many of the superheroes would go broke. As they had nowhere to go, poor heroes would go homeless boo-hoo-hoo. And they never knew when the jobless superheroes would turn against the higher brass. So to save their own hinds, they introduced an excuse of a game, named Battlefield. So, to strongly regulate the superheroes with destructive powers, just because the association is full of scaredy cats, they formed this game. Now, Seo MoonYeob starts to understand why all the strong Korean superhumans from the older days turned into coaches and players over time. Although people did try to use the superheroes for their own gains, but the king of shit-talking, Seo MoonYeob, has always been at their throats since the beginning. So he is the reason everyone wets their pants upon confronting him. Nonetheless, since the Koreans have had a bad starting point, the player levels has not been of messy levels too. As soon as Baek Ji-ho makes the notion that he wants him to play the game, Seo MoonYeob instantly declines, pointing out that he is trying to recruit him for the Battlefield games and try to get him to shove his skills against the turf there. On the other hand, Seo MoonYeob only wants to live a normal life, as his life of heroism ended within the final dungeon. But Baek Ji-ho insists that it is just for the sport, nothing more than that. Considering his free-flowing nature, he reminds Baek Ji-ho that he would not fight for anyone else besides himself. He has been fighting to survive and for attention, seeking after turning superhuman. So now, he wants to ditch all this and live for his own good. Furthermore, the press would add more burden on his shoulders with their absurd headlines and news, since they are already habitual of bootlicking. Seo MoonYeob completely rejects the offer laid by Baek Ji-ho, and both are somehow fine with it. Suddenly, Seo MoonYeob looks at a billboard citing that not all superhumans are a complete failure in this day and age. He points at a model on a billboard with such pervy eyes. only for his dreams to be ruined by her being the daughter of Baek Ji-ho. Considering Seo MoonYeob last saw her when she was 6, but she is 23 now. Seo MoonYeob starts blabbering nonsense to make the tone a bit lighter, just because he played his lecherous word game against her, but Baek Ji-ho stops him and admits that it is all fine. Finally, both make it to the house of Baek Ji-ho. They are met by Han Seung-gi, wife of Baek Ji-ho. Although she looks way younger for her age, but she welcomes them both. A sudden realization that he came back to life finally hits Seo MoonYeob as he looks at the couple chattering with each other. He only thinks that he came back to a world with no dungeons or fighting, just a plain world with boring games and boring boomers. So, now the worldly struggles hit him as he thinks of his jobless complications. At the end, he decides to play around like a recluse and stay at home doing nothing. The dream of every teenager, not gonna lie. As he decides to watch the rerun of his favorite drama with 17 years worth of episodes remaining in the bag. Baek Ji-ho gives him a look of surprise over this new revelation that he will only slouch around. Meanwhile, the reporters outside are stalking him just to get a glimpse of Seo MoonYeob, as the place is crowded with paparazzi and reporters. Seo MoonYeob decides to tackle with the reporters the next day, all gathered at one place, so that he could reject them like a 5th-grade girl crush, so they can finally leave him alone in his new endeavors. The next day, at the press conference, he sternly says to all the reporters to ask all the questions today, and they should not dare to barge into his life after this day ever again. Dude legit wants peace, give it to him, y'all. With that, he is bombarded with questions one by one, until one reporter tries to gaslight him like a nosy aunt about his status of joining Battlefield as a player. Although Seo MoonYeob declines this, to which he further instigates that maybe he is scared from failure, and that he is perhaps a snowflake now. Seo MoonYeob, being the savage he is, remarks on his shiny head due to his failing hairline, and shuts that reporter up for good. He further claims that Battlefield does not look fun to him. That is why he will not join as well. He signs off from the conference in a hard-boiled style, and reminds them to never bother him again. But as he is walking off the stage, another reporter stops him to ask a question. He is irritated by this constant yapping of them. The reporter cites that player Gerald Walker called the 7 heroes a bunch of sissies, and that they cannot touch him at all costs, so he asks for his remarks on this one. Seo MoonYeob is left speechless. The reporter then briefs Seo MoonYeob about the top 3 players in the world, which consists of Nathan Bernard from France, Roy Meyer from Ireland, and Daniel Mansky from Germany. Not seeing Walker within this list, he taunts that joke of a player, and openly lays a challenge that Gerald Walker can come fight Seo MoonYeob in real life if really is a big shot, as he will kick his butt with his very 2 hands and shove his sorry butt into the ground. He ate and left no crumbs here, whoa. In the USA, Zach Curry Wood, the US Battlefield agency player, and Walker himself see the live telecast and their ego goes kaboom. And they immediately prepare a plane to go to Korea, as the rivalry between these two is definitely on. Early in the morning, Baek Ji-ho receives a call out of the blues informing him about a match with the USA. Baek Ji-ho is definitely tensed about it as he looks as tainted as a potato because of the sheer seriousness of the call. Seo MoonYeob is only annoyed by his call. Why would not he though? Baek Ji-ho informs him that the match is in 2 weeks from now, and it's all because of Seo MoonYeob poking his stick into the wrong monster. As Walker, who is fuming due to this public humiliation, wants to fight against them, but since Seo MoonYeob does not play Battlefield and to protect his tiny ego, he will pick out on the Korean team by obliterating those weak kids one by one. The Koreans are definitely kittens in front of that tiger. Seo MoonYeob only says that he is indeed a weird guy, trying to sate his fragile ego like that. Seo MoonYeob further inquires that if it is a national team's game, then Hae-yeon must be there as well, since she is a national player. In the meantime, Hae-yeon enters the house, asks her mother where Seo MoonYeob is, and instantly rushes towards him. She jumps on him and blows the living hell out of him. Seo MoonYeob reminds her that she has gotten big, so she needs to be careful, or only God knows what will happen to Seo. Then she tells him that she could never forget him since he brought her chocolate and cookies as a child, when inquired about if she remembers him. He then asks her whether she is here for the match, to which she denies and tells that she is here to meet Seo MoonYeob himself. Furthermore, she tries to affirm whether he is interested in Battlefield or not. He only says that he is not interested in it. Considering the stuck-up person he is, he never changes his stance. She physically bullies him to change his answer, but to no avail. They both blame each other that they have changed, and are not like their past selves. With a typical fake depressive state, she moves to the side, blackmailing him like a good girl that he used to listen to her. although he tells her that it was only up till the point where he used to bring her chocolates. Now she comes up with a different request. She asks him to tag along for the avatar check to the association. He really wants to finish his drama episode, but Hae-yeon begs him with the cute puppy face eyes, another old trick in the book. So he finally agrees on going with her. He then asks her that where are they going. Hae-yeon only replies back with a smug face and that he will get to know really soon. They reach the Korea Battlefield Association, where Hae-yeon is assisted with her avatar check. With that said, she sits within the contraption and teleports within the battlefield arena. She orders to summon a monster to fight in front of Seo MoonYeob. The operator then briefs Seo MoonYeob that it is a virtual reality sport, that they are recreating dungeons, monsters, and the players in virtual reality. That is why first-time participants need to get their avatars made at the association. With that said, he starts watching Hae-yeon and her gameplay. She is playing with keen senses against the wolf monster, and at the end she slays her foe, as if slicing a feather with a chainsaw. With that done, she comes back to the real world and asks Seo MoonYeob about her performance. He taunts her by still calling her a 6-year-old. She rightfully is mentally a child though, so she tells him to give it a try then. He declines, but then Hae-yeon insists that she wants to see his strength, because she was never able to see him fight against the underworlders since she does not have any memories from those times. He sighs and then gives it a try. He gets his avatar made right away by going into the connection module. He is then given his weapons, albeit heavy, but light according to his physique. So, with a spear and shield in hand, he enters the battlefield, as if Hercules make way into the Greek pantheon. Seo MoonYeob goes into the system and is sent to a similar-looking place as the testing area. So, all of the mechanisms are working perfectly fine with him. Thus, he warms himself up. A dungeon creature, Salurban, whose strongest specimens are stored on the system. This rip-off starfish is a dangerous foe to encounter, as it can only be damaged by aura and no physical attacks. It proceeds to attack Seo MoonYeob, and he nonchalantly throws his spear away, as if he is having a walk in the forest. He prepares his finger to attack, and in the blink of an eye, obliterates it. Seo is unfazed after something so grandeur. Both the instructor and Hae-yeon are awestruck. Seo MoonYeob orders the instructor to summon a new mob, as he wants to test something. Seo MoonYeob is analyzing that the monsters here have no differences between the real deals. While the summoning process is going on, someone with an external module connects with the system and spawns his hideous self into the battlefield. He tries to taunt Seo MoonYeob by sarcastically giving him the title of the strongest superhuman, as Seo is not satisfied with a mere Salurban, as if he is hungry for a whole buffet of monsters. And suddenly, Walker breaks into the module claiming if his battle invitation from before is still valid. Seo MoonYeob has no words to offer, as there is no use replying to Ranting Rambler. Walker further asks him regarding his silence, or that maybe he pissed his pants because he is here. With full rage, he charges towards Seo MoonYeob that reputation is nothing but a facade. He slashes his blade towards Seo MoonYeob. He dodges it while citing how he has been thinking about the levels of this test. The frontier between the two now begins. More people walk into the testing area. It is Baek Ji-ho, the association president, who allowed Walker to join, and a woman. All of this is pre-planned, as Park Jin-tae, the Korean Battlefield Association president, flirtatiously affirms the woman besides him, Emma Morse, manager of Gerald Walker. With this said, Park Jin-tae is optimistic that Seo MoonYeob might gain an interest in Battlefield, thus leading to a win-win situation. The epic battle is unfolding within the battlefield, as Parker and MoonYeob face off against each other. Seo MoonYeob uses Eyes of Analysis on that bulky Walker, and finds out that he is specialized in tanking. They pause fighting for a bit, with Seo MoonYeob contemplating the strength of this guy, as he is tailor-made for tanking. He then remembers his new power that he discovered in the hospital, so he decides to use it against Parker. Seo MoonYeob charges with full speed towards Parker, and stops right before him. As he stands still, Parker attacks him and catapults him backwards. Even Parker is surprised at this move of his, as if Jerry wanted to be intentionally hit by Tom. In the next moment, Seo MoonYeob gets up and strikes Parker again in a flash. He could have died, as he isn't even shielding against the projectile that Seo MoonYeob threw. That is what you get slacking mid-battle, you ugly weirdo. While sitting in a corner with smoke emanating off of his body, he smiles back at Parker, since his immortality trait has been working, which would not let him die from physical causes, and if surviving as an art, he would definitely be its Picasso. Seo MoonYeob unveils his secret trick, his immortality. Parker is astonished at this new revelation, his eyeballs might pop out of his head. Now, Seo MoonYeob explains that he got this power after death almost kissed him goodnight in the final dungeon. So if this gives him an unfair advantage over his rather weaker adversary now. Seo MoonYeob explains the controller to nerf him down or else this will not be fair. So he asks him to seal his immortality within the game. With the power sealed away, he further says that considering the crybaby Walker is, this will make things even, if he loses to immortal foe. They have a little dialogue, and Seo MoonYeob cockily claims that he is stronger than the rumors say. Walker hands him over his spear, and thus they decide to continue again. Big the savage he is, he lights up his ego by ordering him to defeat the top 3 first then aim for Seo MoonYeob, as he is at the top of the hierarchy. Considering the fact that Walker is not even a part of the top 3, he's got a huge babbling loudspeaker for a mouth. He provokes that bearded crybaby even more, and Walker charges towards the blabbering hero. They exchange blows, and then Walker halts, because Seo MoonYeob disappears into thin air. He shows up right behind Walker and strikes, but Walker barely dodges. Seo MoonYeob praises his reflexes, but decides to end this bot quickly. So, he charges his spear and throws it towards Walker. He blocks it, but he is definitely frustrated from all this. He is definitely trembling like a leaf in a storm from this. Walker is overwhelmed by his power, and comes forth, the knight in shining armor, claiming his victory. Although Walker denies this claim, to which Seo reminds him that he can never win against Seo MoonYeob, as it is fated to be. All of a sudden, Seo MoonYeob starts giving him recommendations and advises that he should switch to a smaller shield, as it will help in dexterity and control, and also not obstruct his vision. He asks Seo MoonYeob if he is lying or playing games with him, to which he denies that allegation. Walker accepts the advice and requests him for a rematch in 2 weeks. He berates the bearded baby, citing that he's not interested in this game, as he has a lot of dramas to catch up to. The best reason to decline a fight, Chad. Although Walker is insistent about the rematch. He promises that it will be different next time, although he has legit been blinded by his own defeat, as his adamancy knows no bounds. Everyone looks at them in shock, while Jin-tae Park knows that it will help them in the longer run. Back at home and while watching TV, he is interrupted by the news that Seo MoonYeob might finally change his mind to play Battlefield after his recent match with Walker, and that he might participate in a Korea versus USA friendly match if the USA team goes deathless against Korea in the upcoming match. It further states that Seo MoonYeob himself has accepted all of these terms. He looks in shock while the news is played, and he knows that everyone played him real bad, and he is finally stuck in this booby trap, out of which he might not come out. At the Korea Battlefield Association, Seo MoonYeob barges into the room asking Park Jin-tae regarding who spread the rumors regarding his entrance in the battlefield. He's fuming at him like a volcano about to erupt. On top of that, someone leaked a video too with all the part where he declines his offer edited out, just like some evidence presented in a court. He's aggravated over all this, and that he will definitely find whoever did this, and probably skin them alive. Amongst all this, Park Jin-tae stands up, deeply apologizes as the president, but considering the circumstances, he could not have done much. Since in front of the stronger American Battlefield Association, he stood like a baby with his diaper about to come loose, absolutely feeble, as he was pressured from all sides and so had to give in, and thus this dilemma worse than a world war stands here for Seo. Seo MoonYeob understands his point, but he is still aggravated about it. Park Jin-tae stops him and tells him of a brilliant plan, so that he can finally get out of this coffin full of blood-sucking bugs he is stuck in. So he proposes that the friendly will be held if the American team defeats the Korean side flawlessly with no deaths. So, he assures Seo MoonYeob again that the Korean team can kill some players, thus preventing the friendly. At the end, he is frustrated, since his days of tranquility have been eaten by termites now. He does not care about all this, just like a broken boyfriend. Park Jin-tae cites that since Seo MoonYeob is so strong, running away from these circumstances is a tough nut to crack. Park Jin-tae now tries to blackmail Seo MoonYeob as they have been only old buddies. He can do him this one last favor, for old time's sake. He swears like a 5-year-old that he will donate all of the profits to his favorite child protection charities. At this point, Seo MoonYeob is irritated that he might as well punch Park in the face. Not gonna lie, that would be satisfying. But due to his debt towards Park Jin-tae, he agrees on doing it, but for only one time. He tries to smooch Seo MoonYeob, but he nudges him off. He asks for the initial conditions again, that if in the official match even one American is killed, he will not have to do this. Park Jin-tae affirms this. With that said, they plan to go eat dinner. Park Jin-tae peeks over the previous scorecards where Korea has literally been obliterated in all of the matches, with not one American death on them. Back at the Baek residency, Seo MoonYeob checked the news where it reads that he has accepted the proposal and that he might enter battlefield soon. Again, another news to turn him into a raging steam engine. All of this is agitating the living daylights out of Seo MoonYeob, as he only wants to peacefully watch dramas. He blames Park Jin-tae for all this, and rightfully so. He walks out of the house to see Hae-yeon training like a gazelle with maximum speed. Albeit fast, but Baek tells her to get faster and train better. Like a typical dad, Baek fills her up with all the advice in the world. Seo MoonYeob uses eyes of analysis on Hae-yeon, obviously for non-perverted reasons, and he sees that some things are off and some are good in her stats. Seo MoonYeob barges in like a nosy aunt and orders them to halt the training, as Hae-yeon has already hit her limit for dexterity, although she is a speed type, but the father-daughter duo are different, and Baek is training her wrong. But he deduces that she is not the right choice for a sub-dealer position, and that it might have worked for Baek himself, but it will not work for Hae-yeon herself. He asks her what she would do after grappling someone with a whip, although she answers, but Seo MoonYeob cites that it is wrong, and that she needs to whack them in the kisser herself, as it is not efficient for her to follow various styles, nor follow orthodox methods. Along with that, she does not have dependable teammates too. So she will directly be their Grim Reaper by yielding a sword. Seo MoonYeob demonstrates the maneuver by grabbing the opponent with a whip and then slashing right through them. She needs to learn this, as she cannot kill with a whip, so her focus should be on strength and swordsmanship training. And her position will be changed to melee dealer from now on. And thus begins a rigorous training session akin to Dragon Ball Z. 500 sets of strength training exercises begin now. From now on, Seo MoonYeob will coach Hae-yeon up till the match date to perfect the game plan. At the USA Nation Team Training Center, agent and manager, John Kim, praises Walker for noticeable improvements, and with the change of shields, he has finally broken through his one weakness. Now his enemies cannot knock his butt here and there, and he might even break into the top 3 real soon. But still he requires a lot of practice to handle various adversaries. Walker, who also plays in money, asks for the worth in money if his net value increases after this change, so it is estimated to profit him with at least $10 million. So with that done, he sends that much amount to Seo MoonYeob as consultation fees. Bro thinks Bill Gates is his father. It is the day for the fated match, a match even bigger than the El Clasico. It is time for Korea versus USA in Battlefield at the Seoul International Battlefield Stadium. Everyone has their eyes on the outcome, as they might get to feast on an even delightful fight later on. With that said, players from both sides are introduced first, the American uniform being a rip-off with the Captain America attire, while the Koreans look like rowdy cowboys. All eyes are on Baek Hae-yeon too after her position change. The dungeon match begins in the decrepit underworlder castle protected by skeletons, the Palace of Marta Borni, which consists of 3 levels with a boss at the end of each level, Skeleton Warrior, Death Knight, and the Bone Dragon and Lich on the 3 floors respectively. Now the players start entering. The American team tours through the level 1 skeletons as if a knife going through butter. Now, for the Korean team, they avoid all of the initial low-leveled skeletons to reach the boss immediately. They are strategizing on a high-risk tactic to take down the boss first to gain points. This will also disrupt the American team, as their tempo would also be disrupted. And then, the Korean team faces off against the skinny but huge Skeleton Warrior. The boss hunt finally begins. The American team is concerned about their rivals, as they have already started fighting the boss, and that too with an unusual tactic. With this problem in mind, they need to hurry to the boss ground, and the sluttish Walker needs to use the power of an ally to reach there. Now, as Baek Hae-yeon is finally going in for the finishing blow, midair, she is attacked by Walker, who used the power tempest of his teammate to fly in, and thus catapults her a million miles away, killing Baek Hae-yeon in the process. Walker does praise their strategy, but flaunts that the outcome would still be in their own favor. One egoistic bastard he is. The American Battlefield Justice League shows up and finishes off the Skeleton Warrior. Now, they begin killing the Korean team one by one. They are being utterly humiliated after having their boss kill stolen, and then their team massacred. They really should quit playing at this point in time. And the USA ends the first set flawlessly with no deaths on their side. The Korean side is frustrated, especially Baek Hae-yeon, as she was even taught by Seo MoonYeob himself. Immediately, in the locker room, Seo MoonYeob calls in everyone. He then addresses all the points where they were lacking. As their attributes are low, they are panicky throughout the game. Even though their win percentage is 0, losing like this is nonetheless unsightly. So he proceeds to tell them how to get Walker out of the equation and send him to the game afterlife once and for all. In the locker room, Seo MoonYeob reminds everyone that he and Park Jin-tae raided the Martaborni in their younger days. Although it is not difficult, but still the enemies on level 3 require balls of steel to kill. Now, considering the bunch of these weakling sissies who can't even win a match, they cannot even get to that point. He praises their strategy to go straight for the boss, but that applies for if they would have carried the plan out properly, because they legit need to be spoon-fed everything. The frontline attackers did not check the situation of the enemy team. They kept sleeping within their own utopia and rushed in to kill the boss, as scouting is as necessary as attacking for these blind dimwits. And as for the backline, they should have at least taken cover when the frontline is being obliterated like ants by the enemies, as all they did was stand like statues and get themselves killed. Every numbskull here lacks common sense and the basics, and you feel sorry for Baek Ki-ho for having these jokers as a team. Now, Seo MoonYeob starts the actual advice, the strategy for the second set. And with that said, we move on to the second round. The American team splits into 2 groups, with a rather new tactic this time. It is the G5 formation, where the quick-footed team secures the area, while the cleanup party, including Walker, will focus on the hunting grounds. This tactic will definitely utilize most of the brilliant skills of the team, and for the Korean team, they start running again just like the first match. Only God knows what they are up to again. But this time Baek Hae-yeon has changed her position, optimistic for a breakthrough now, since they are all good for nothing. The American scouting party is analyzing the situation, and they deduce that the Koreans are playing a late game. Even Walker is optimistic that they will beat the Koreans. He needs his egoism checked by a doctor at this point, and that he will finally get to fight against Seo MoonYeob. But suddenly, a light cracks open from behind them, as if some revelation is coming through. The Koreans crack open a wall and charge straight in. The Americans are only left in shock after this new attack strategy. The scene cuts to the momentous advisory session. Back in the locker room, Seo MoonYeob told everyone to scout first and foremost, and Baek Hae-yeon will do that task. And if Walker and his party are less than 5 people, they need to attack them no matter what. He elaborates that Martaborni is constructed with one-way streets, but there are secret passages set up by the underworlders with warps. Thus, these paths are best suitable for scouting and ambushes. Using these paths will lead them to the American team undisclosed. All 11 of them will run through it and do an all-out attack, being split into 2 teams, and they will for sure get back at the Americans this time. He also advised them to aim for the legs of Walker, since his legs are more vulnerable now after switching to a smaller shield. Although the answer is still ambiguous to this dilemma, but that is their only shot to win. With all the odds stacked against the Americans in this situation, they might have a casualty or 2 at the end, as all the Koreans need to do is believe in his strategy and charge straight in like a raging bull. Cut scene, and we are back at the game. The Korean onslaught begins, and they rise upwards as if possessed by some spirit. And before the Americans fix their formation, the Koreans attack. Baek Hae-yeon receives concentrated firepower from her allies and goes straight for Walker. She teleports, and then kills the 2 support characters at the back, with Walker himself having 3 kills to his name. The American advance party cannot return as well, as they are outnumbered 3-8. Walker, delusional and optimistic like a teen girl in love, goes ahead and begins his own onslaught. And now the showdown between Walker and Hae-yeon begins. After some sneaky attacking, she finally grabs hold of his leg with her whip, and she cuts his leg off with this. The small kids have finally grown up. Despite being the weaker team, the ambush attack has been successful, as they have sacrificed 7 players to kill 3 Americans. A helpless Walker with an amputated leg lies on the ground, with Baek Hae-yeon approaching him. He speculates that she got lessons from Seo MoonYeob himself, to which she only replies back by killing Walker, and with that the Korean team has miraculously killed 5 members of the American team. Seo MoonYeob smiles and flaunts at Walker, as his student finally got that prize head of his. Although the Korean team is looking way more promising than their previous juvenile selves, where even spoon-feeding could not have helped them. But still, after all those efforts, the USA team leads 2-0 at the end of the second set. Albeit a small and weak team, they still managed to get 5 kills against the Americans, which is an achievement in itself, with the highlights being their bursting through the wall, And amongst all this, Baek Hae-yeon is leading the pack like a true hero. In an interview with coach Baek Ji-ho, even he says that it is exemplary of them, as there is a change in their demeanor. Although they lost, but still the experience is valuable for them. They still cannot win a million years, I guess. Regarding the ambush tactic, he receives some help from Seo MoonYeob himself, as he is the veteran regarding dungeons here. Seo MoonYeob here is agitated as Baek Ji-ho wants to put him into the game as well. Next up, the sparkly-eyed Baek Hae-yeon. She proclaims that all of this success is due to her training with her uncle, Seo MoonYeob, as he made her stronger and also advised her for the position change. Seo MoonYeob, still frustrated of both the father and daughter mentioning him on live television. Park Jin-tae appears from the back, and he taunts Seo MoonYeob over his habit of getting angry when embarrassed. Considering what he goes through, anyone would become like that. He tells him in an agitated manner to go for the interview, since he is the president, but he prefers that staying in hidden and out of the limelight like an introverted recluse is the best. Then Seo MoonYeob asks him that why is he here. Park Jin-tae exclaims that all this reminds him of the old days, as the hidden path in the dungeon is only known by a handful of people. They really are going to take some knowledge to their graves. And here, Seo MoonYeob proclaims that he made the strategy for the second set, although it is akin to cheating. But still, considering the odds, using the agility of the team against the American tanks would give the best results. Also, he wants to avoid playing that dreadful friendly, he devised a more certain strategy like this. Seo really hates playing this game, huh? Park Jin-tae also touched the topic of him training Baek Hae-yeon, as she's finally starting getting into the groove too. Park Jin-tae also cites that he loves to see Seo MoonYeob act like this, and that is a waste if he does not enter battlefield. So Park Jin-tae asks him one more time that he should use his talent even more, and do not let it go down in the gutters. Seo MoonYeob reminds him of winning that bet in his office, but Park Jin-tae stops him and makes his one final request. He speaks of the Korean Battlefield Pro League season, which is starting soon. So, before the Pro League starts, Park Jin-tae wants to do a charity game with famous players. So he wants Seo MoonYeob to participate in that at the very least. He gives an ambiguous answer, but does not decline. Alright, we are getting somewhere. Park Jin-tae is shocked over this, to which Seo MoonYeob reaffirms him that he will think about it, as he is curious after watching the performance of Baek Hae-yeon. So he might ditch some dramas and pass his time with Battlefield for once, and since all the dungeons are now gone, this is the only place to fight as well, so to an extent his heart still yearns to fight. Park Jin-tae now proceeds to show him that the video on demand of the match reached more than 10 million views within an hour, with the comments literally wielding and praising them for their feats. The amount of people simping is insane. Seo MoonYeob reminds him that he is not saying yes, but just saying that he might think about it, so there's no need to be excited about it. So the old geezer really needs to hold his courses. But Seo MoonYeob questions him that the Pro League is starting soon though, and this charity match being thrown in last minute looks way too suspicious. Park Jin-tae shuns this allegation quietly, as he knows it is the slick truth. Seo MoonYeob comes up with some conditions regarding his participation. Even before he states them, Park Jin-tae accepts all of them. MoonYeob smirks and lists them down. Let us hope it is nothing naughty. At the Baek residency, Baek Ji-ho is confused at the current situation. Seo MoonYeob claims that it is what it is. As Jin-tae accepted all of his requests, he is going as a special guest for the charity match, so being treated like an MVP everywhere. Although his initial plans with his second life were to watch dramas and slouch, but now he has to get to work. Being the narcissist he is, he knows that the opponents are going to be no match for him, and he can spank them without even touching them. It is obvious that he is participating, but Baek Ji-ho asks why he is being dragged into this match and the training sessions with him. Seo MoonYeob replies that there is only one person that he would love to beat for fun, and that is Baek himself. Baek Ji-ho tells him to be gentle with the violence, because it has been 17 years since he has laid rest to his weapons. Seo MoonYeob uses eyes of analysis on Ji-ho, and finds out that he definitely has gotten weaker, but he can regain his stats after some efforts. The boomer needs to strengthen his rusty old bones. So starting tomorrow, both of them are going to have endless training sessions till death. Baek Ji-ho falls pale upon this dialogue. He knows he is doomed. In his office, Park Jin-tae is reminiscing over the two conditions Seo MoonYeob laid. That he wants to be on the same team as Baek Hae-yeon, and he wants Ji-ho to run with him. It will also garner attention from the sponsors too. Park Jin-tae calls all the news agencies. And in the next newspaper, it becomes the headline that two heroes of the Korean Justice League are playing together after 17 years. During a training session of Baek Ji-ho and Seo MoonYeob, MoonYeob is agitated over the idiocy of Baek and his weakened technique. He tries to motivate Ji-ho to regain it, and he should try to become faster. What do you expect from someone with husked bones, though? With that said, he charges towards MoonYeob, although he attacks, but MoonYeob blocks in return. He claims that his technique is fine. But then he reminds him of a better form back in the day. Seo really lives 17 years in the past. Due to his old age, it is hard for Baek to train. MoonYeob taunts him that back in the day it would be worth a warm-up. Although it has been 8 hours since they started, he begs for mercy from Seo. MoonYeob emphasizes on not caring about him as he needs to watch his drama after this session. To which Baek shouts that he is still the same as before, but he himself has aged, so he needs a rest. The boomer finally admitted his lethargy himself. And Baek tells that MoonYeob also has to go somewhere, so he will miss his drama anyways. So, later on, MoonYeob meets the Korean Battlefield Association engineering team leader, Yoo Hyun-soo, to get his avatar test done. So for this day, Round Tenor from the World Association will be overseeing his test processes. MoonYeob claims that the last time he played and killed the Salarben and defeated Walker. So is it still necessary to do it? But Yoo tells him that his avatar is still without its athletic ability measurements, which are needed to know if problems are there when initiating an avatar. So, correct data is needed for that reason, and a complete sync rate is necessary. Since the avatar is a mirror copy of all the abilities of the player, and it can even mimic the unawakened powers of a player. They're really copying Soul's game now. There are even more secrets to the Battlefield system, to which MoonYeob replies that they are copying the underground civilization. So he deduces that maybe an underworlder is supporting the World Association or something. If Seo were not to be a hero, he would definitely be a conspiracy theorist, thinking of all the crap he conspires. He thinks that MoonYeob definitely has some loose screws, that is why he is talking about all this weird stuff. Now begins his testing. Firstly, he gets his strength, dexterity, and aura statistics checked, as they need to find the best sync rate. MoonYeob has to do his best. He begins with the strength test, where he has to pull a handle thrice for accurate measurements, and to their surprise, MoonYeob is at best average in strength, something rather fascinating for a fat mouth who brags about strength. Then, the dexterity test, where he has to push the switches simultaneously on both ends of the room until he is told to stop, and he comes out to be highly dexterous. He does the test again, and this time ends up with an even higher score. Seo hacked into his body, I am damn sure. He then asks for the highest score, which is held by Nathan Bernard, since his comparison is with Ji-ho in his prime. He seems like an intriguing fellow to MoonYeob. Yeah, he is not falling in love with Nathan because of that. With that said, he goes for a third attempt for the dexterity test. He focuses hard, and this time his score equals that of Nathan Bernard, with both tied at 1,007 points now. Now Seo has turned himself into simping material. Even Seo is shocked, and he thinks that he is moving faster than his capabilities. Keeping this in mind, he goes for his second attempt at the strength test. He is too full of himself, or either he is too optimistic. He focuses properly again, and pulls the handle. To everyone's curiosity, it is much higher than before. Since his focus has gotten better, he is showing powers beyond his limits. Bro thinks he is Superman. He knows that his powers have not changed in the meantime, and he keeps feeling this sense of déjà vu. This feeling is back from when all alone in the final dungeon, and he displayed a superhuman level of focus on at the door of death. It is always something when he's about to die. His willpower is his sole limit breaker at this point, as it exceeds all human limits. His narcissism shows up again, and claims that he does not even need to fight, as his willpower and immortality are beyond comparison right now. Now, the third test, measuring his aura, he has to put his hand on the orb, and focus as much aura as he can, leading to the orb to change its color. They further explain that it is one of the most valued stats when checking for rising prospects to differ the gems from the trash. After awakening, although his aura is high, he still tries to get it higher. So currently his aura capacity is perfectly maximized. The record for the highest aura stat attainable by mankind sits in his lap only. Someone seriously give him a crown for this or something. Everyone is astonished. As his aura stats are highest ever in the history of humans, their jaws drop and emotions cropped. MoonYeob sets the record for the highest aura stats in the history of mankind. He flaunts that it is just natural for him to do something like this, a self-infatuated bastard. The previous record is held by his teammate, Shuren. MoonYeob berates and praises her at the same time, just like a jealous bully. since they have had a lot of banter back in the day. Now, Yu informs him that MoonYeob cannot use his immortality ability in the match, as it will only be unfair to the other teams, since that will only lead to automatic victory for his own team. Bro won at life with this one trick, and cannot even use it now. Yu apologizes for limiting his capabilities, and that the association will compensate him accordingly. But it does not concern MoonYeob in the least, although he will gladly accept the money. Meanwhile, some rip-off Ku Klux Klan cult group worshipping Seo MoonYeob as their protector is gathered somewhere, as their salvation lies only with Seo MoonYeob since he is the immortal who has returned from death. They think he is Jesus or something, and with that they start chanting his name again and again. MoonYeob walks and sees them, and is immediately annoyed by these shrouded napkins. Baek Ji-ho tells him that it is Seo Moon Foundation, a pseudo cult which worships MoonYeob as a god. Imagine have such high-intensity simps over you lol. MoonYeob recalls that these same termites were outside his hospital too when he appeared, trying to gain his attention. Those idiots believe that when the world will end, Seo MoonYeob will come back to life again and save all the chosen ones. Stories no different than fanatics today, since those weirdos are asking for the destruction of the world. Typical cultist behavior. MoonYeob needs to teach them a lesson. He walks away with a resolve while Baek Ji-ho tries to stop him. He jumps and lands in front of the cocooned cult group. As they are chanting his praises, he tells those noisy bedsheets to shut up. Once silent, he addresses them that he's aware of their feelings towards him. But he sternly tells that those jobless pillowcases really need to leave him and get a life for once. If the leader of this cult comes across Seo MoonYeob himself, he is as good as dead for creating this annoying group. Even the annoyance of toddlers quivers in front of them. The cultists start blabbering that Seo MoonYeob is rejecting them, but they conclude that he might be testing their faith right now. So as the blind devotees they are, they decide to show him their faith. They start chanting his name once again. This ticks off Seo MoonYeob so badly that he gives them an ultimatum to shut up in 10 seconds, or else he will cause problems for them where the sun does not shine. Using the immunity provided to him by the government, just like a spoiled politician, he beats up every one of the cultists, and then minutes later, there's a mound of beaten up cultists akin to a pile of turd. Seo MoonYeob is atop that mound. He assures that none of the cultists follow him like crazy fangirls from now on. He ascertains that this never happens in the future again. After this drama, he gets down and back to Baek Ji-ho. Seo MoonYeob talks about resuming the training. Baek makes a remark that he is definitely the craziest person in his life. Well, we can assure that too, since the dude is definitely nuts. Seo MoonYeob shuns it off as a compliment instead, but claims that the group has lost some screws proclaiming him as a god. Baek Ji-ho tells that it is useless talking now, and reporters might storm any minute now, so they are better off at home now. Nutjob Seo plans on beating the reporters up as well. Baek Ji-ho only warns him that doing this will only attract more reporters like a flies on a peeled orange. For atop a building, far away, another shrouded entity looks at the duo, calling Seo the savior. Its presence catches his eyes, but as Seo begins to notice it, it disappears. Cuts to the day of the charity match. At the Incheon International Airport, Joe Pellman, the American battlefield agent, walks out. As for him coming to Korea, is all because of the arrival of Seo MoonYeob, and his participation within the match has caught his eyes. The nostalgia of coming back to Korea is hitting him right in the guts. As he reminisces over the olden days, he praises the Korean superhumans from 17 years ago, and thanks to them he turned into the best battlefield agent in the USA. Another nice way to flaunt in it. Although they wanted to put their hands on the 7 Korean superhumans, none really showed interest, although Shuren was intrigued, but at the end it was all for naught. Maybe she was just too dim-witted like her teammate Seo. Her extinction ray power has the ability to finish matches within a mere 3 seconds. Although Joe missed twice to recruit her, he will not miss out this time as has his eyes on the prize that is indeed Seo MoonYeob. Now, Joe looks over towards the European battlefield agent Jake Land, who is also a superhuman. He teases Joe to compete fairly this time. Attention overcomes Joe after this, as he is afraid to lose his target against Jake. Both lock eyes and exchange glares like 2 girls crushing over the same boy. Now, from another side of the airport, the Morrow brothers, Jen Morrow and Philip Morrow, club owners of the Paris Lumiere Battlefield Club, make their way. They look like dungeon creatures to be fair though. They come ahead citing that the culprit who destroyed their dungeon business has now stepped foot into Battlefield, and although that he does not intend to be a player, but he has taken his first steps, and they cannot let Seo MoonYeob go like this. But the pair of kids, the Baldy twins, start simping over him, and that they will definitely get his autograph this time, as they were not able to meet him in the war. Not exactly how you meet someone who destroyed your business, boys. All four people lock eyes with one aim in mind, to not let Seo MoonYeob stolen by the other party. With the sounds of her heels, the airport froze in awe. The Marilyn Monroe of the manhwa is finally walking in. The untouchable of the continent, the walking tactics machine. The youngest of the 7 heroes, Shuren, makes her appearance. Outside the stadium, there is a ton of people as if someone is giving free food. And some folks are appreciating that people died during the war or this rush would be worse off. A natural selection enthusiast is amongst us. The person who said this speaks with no remorse like a Chad. The one saying all this is indeed our hero, the ill-mouthed Seo MoonYeob. Seo MoonYeob and Baek Ji-ho walk out of the car with the air full of chants and support of the revived hero. They go wild as he goes down the lane. Baek only wonders how this brat gets this much attention. This question is indeed a mystery. With that said, the interviewers and reporters run towards the two like hungry wild animals that just saw food. Baek deliberately pushes Seo and saves his own hive from the interviews. He is bombarded with questions from all directions, and he cannot do much about it. Amongst all this, he only feels hatred towards Baek Ji-ho. Although he loves attention-seeking, but this type frustrates him. A perfect remedy. Then someone mentions Shuren, as she is coming to watch the game too. Seo sternly asks him back that why she is here. So the reporter replies that she is here to see a kid she knows who will play the charity game. Seo MoonYeob instantly understands that by the term, she is referring to him. Oh, she is coming to watch little Seo baby play. As Seo walks further into the facility, people start talking that they will finally see the person to whom the Gwang woman statue is dedicated to. Although he is nothing more than an egoistic bastard, he then informs Ji-ho that Shuren is here too. Upon hearing this news, Hae-yeon is excited, but Ji-ho reminds him that he needs to be careful, as she will definitely eat him alive. Considering the last time they met, he treated her like a cuss doll and sweared at her endlessly with no remorse. Enough to make her cry like a little baby, even though she was not even fluent in Korean back then. Now, Seo MoonYeob is scared that she might fire her extinction ray at him in vengeance, and erase his sorry existence from the face of the earth. She might have forgotten the Emities if they were to spend 17 years together, but Seo is still the same character as before, so she might plot something. Alright, something is cooking. Time for another explanatory scene. Shuren, who originally hails from China, was chosen to be one of the 7 heroes to raid the final dungeon. Raise a rich brat carrying an incredible superpower. Thus, she has been heavily protected by the government. But, from the beginning, she's been the biggest crybaby in town due to her low willpower. So, Seo MoonYeob used to berate and degrade her time and time again all the time. Made such comparisons that no one would bear, yet he made those, although Shuren was dim-witted, but still things got harsh at times. Hae-yeon taunts Seo that she will pray for him if he has a second funeral this time. Ji-ho ends this topic and says to talk about it later, as they have something more urgent at hand. Ah yes, his life and protection comes second to this news. Baek Ji-ho addresses everyone regarding the rules, and then mentions Seo as he will be playing his first game ever, so he walks through the rules of the game. There will be 2 teams, Love Team and Hope Team. Love Team will comprise of national representatives, while the Hope Team will comprise of normal players, with the exception of Baek Hae-yeon. The Hope Team will also have the coach, Baek Ji-ho, on their side, as the melee dealer, although he is a bit hesitant about his abilities, but the Hope Team leader, Park Chul-ho, assures him that they will work even harder. Our ill-mouthed hero scoffs at everyone just because he knows that Hae-yeon is leads ahead everyone in the room, and the rest are scraps in front of her. Seo MoonYeob uses eyes of analysis on everyone, and Choi Hyuk catches his eyes for exemplary stats, and in his eyes he should be a good tank. Considering his traits, Seo calls Hyuk to his side. He introduces himself as the melee dealer of the Sangsang Spirits, he irritatedly asking his position, that why he is not the tank for his team. Hyuk tells Seo that he wanted to be a tanker like him, but his minuscule body did not let him follow this passion. He further explains that he can focus his aura onto weapons. Hyuk classes him as real you all. Seo blames his team coach for this position, although his abilities are for a tanker. He has been allotted the rank of a dealer. So, Seo orders him to get a shield quickly. He then uses a tray as a shield, and explains it to Hyuk on how to use shields. He tries to talk back, but Seo immediately shuts him down. So he orders Hyuk to do as what he says. The dominant Seo is back in town again. The crowd watches Seo in shock as they realize that the rumors of him being a nutjob are rightfully true, as he immediately changed the position of someone whom he just met. Albeit, people do not know that he is a genius nutjob at least. No one pays attention to Hyuk, and everyone just turns away from him comically. Dude is legit left alone like a homeless person. After finalizing the positions, everyone wears their armors. The armors are light and sturdy, just like the ones during the war. Baek Ji-ho feels a bit awkward since he is wearing this uniform again after 17 years. It might take some time to bring out his rageful warring mode. The weapons they made for Sue are his original weapons but slightly tweaked. Now, Ji-ho tells him to take it easy and don't be that cocky of a narcissist. Although he knows that Sue is strong, but their opponents are specialized in fighting against humans, so always be on the lookout for things. Even with their minute experiences, they can force a threat anytime. So he smiles and throws a thumb up and tells Baek Ji-ho to go and deal with these experienced juniors of theirs. Both the teams line up to enter the arena, as it is resonating with the roars of the crowd. Sue checks everyone and their abilities, only to find out that although everyone in the national team has a higher average score, but none has a special ability, and they are rather plain and monochromatic. Keeping this in mind, he asks Ji-ho that during selection, does he grade the players or something? So he tells Sue that they test them on multiple factors and use their total score for the grade. Sue then looks at another nonchalant soul, Shim Young-soo, with decent stats but trashy willpower. He thinks of it as another case of the rich papa disorder, since he might be a spoiled rich brat as well, just like Shuren. Shim addresses rudely to Sue as an old man, and treats him rather bluntly as he has been mentally berating him since the beginning. So Sue switched positions and stands with that brat shoulder to shoulder to for a verbal fight. Average bully versus bully behavior indeed. He taunts the brat, saying that he has some complaints from Sue. He gives a side eye and exclaims that he does have a lot of complaints, considering Sue is too egoistic and narcissistic. And his attitude without ever playing Battlefield does not just add up to anything. The brat is a complete delinquent and needs a little whooping. Sue asks him the profession of his dad, so he replies that he is the association vice president, and this truth complies with his speculations of Shim being the way he is, a foul-mouthed rich brat. All of a sudden, an announcement comes for every player to enter the stadium. Sue taunts Shim into entering the stadium. He inquires Sue that why did he ask about his dad and his profession. He replies savagely that what did his dad do to raise a dipshit of a dumbass kid like him, as Sue himself grew up in trifle and in typical middle-class circumstances retrospect to this dollar child, so he hates pampered kids like him. But thanks to the brat, he finally has the will to go and play Battlefield with some intense fire light up within him, and finally whoop some butts in the game with passion.